So have you ever been in a car and hear a song coming through your speakers and instantly remember all the words? Do memories of another time or place, and this is usually the case, events, flood your brain? That happens to me all the time. If I'm on my way to work or even walking down the street and a song hits my ears and bam, I'm somewhere else. I remember the good times and the bad times. I've even had it happen to me when I'm just walking around not really looking for music at all. That happens a lot in grocery stores. Not really sure why. But that's what this channel is about. My music memories. Things that flood into my head while hearing that song. This story is about Tom Petty's song, Walls. At the beginning, let me get this out of the way. I'm not really a Tom Petty fan. He had a few songs that I like, but considering how long his career and how much high regard he seems to be held in, I felt it would be a little insensitive, making you believe that I'm a real honest to good Tom Petty fan. Like I said, I think he probably has 3 or 4 songs from his entire catalog of music that I like. I actually heard this song for the first time in the movie She's the One. It's a movie with Cameron Diaz. I don't think it did very well. Tom Petty did the music for the entire movie, but not being a big Tom Petty fan, that didn't really turn me on to the movie. To be quite honest, I don't really remember what got me focused on the movie, but what I do remember is that it was a part of my early days of collecting DVDs. Now, if you've been listening to my stories, you know that when I start collecting things, I usually go pretty hard and try to dive deep into the obscure things that most people haven't heard of. I like having the inside scoop that other people just haven't heard about yet. It sometimes leads to wonderful gems like this movie or horrible trash fires of a movie like Shakes the Clown. I bought my first DVD player out of my college tuition money. It was the tail end of the VHS era, and the DVD platform wasn't the new hotness yet. It wasn't as widespread as it would become. You see, there was no porn on the platform yet. That would come later, and would seriously cause the DVD as a media format to explode. I guess that's what happens. People follow porn. Maybe that's why everyone is so obsessed with the internet these days. So my first purchase after the hardware was a little movie called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. A real martial arts masterpiece that looked amazing on DVD. Unfortunately, nowadays the slow pace kind of overwhelms the amazing fight sequences. But back then, I was pretty pumped to have a subtitled movie as my first movie purchase. Okay, it wasn't actually my first movie. That was probably Batman from 1989, but it was my first shot at owning DVDs. I mean, without the constant flood of data that consumes every aspect of the internet in our lives these days, I'd have to go to the local Walmart every Tuesday morning after work to see the new releases. Back then, all the new movies, and I think music, was released on a Tuesday. This was because the movie corporate types wanted to get the biggest first week sales that they could. You see, the sales reports for the previous week would come out on a Monday. So if they would release new products on a Tuesday, it would give more people a chance to buy it before the new sales cycle would start. I know many of you have gone to Blockbuster or some other movie rental shop to look for the new release posters and happily rent away. That wasn't me. I don't think I really ever rented anything. Okay, maybe a car or something grand like that, but renting to me just seemed more like a tease. And that seemed cruel in my strange little brain. I would rather just own it forever. That way I could potentially rewatch it whenever I wanted to. Or at the very least, I could show it off to my friends without really telling them that it was a crappy flick. When I would venture across town to the Blockbuster, I would go to buy. That was it. Usually Blockbuster would have a large amount of used movies for sale, always at a much better price than the Walmart. I know some of you would tell me about the quality of the packaging and the discs, but that never really mattered to me. I mean, I grew up in an age of VHS, a medium where if the tape was watched too much, it would become damaged. I mean, the physical tape would wear out after repeated viewings. That idea seemed crazy to me. But before Batman, the one from 1989, came out, people didn't really buy VHS tapes. The movie companies kept the prices very high, hundreds of dollars for one movie, just to suck up more money from the movie rental places. VHS players were still pretty expensive, so people hadn't gotten into really yet collecting movies. That meant that a VHS tape eventually would wear out, but when it did, The store that had rented it had already made all of its money back on the purchase, and usually many times over. Batman changed that. The movie was so popular that Warner Brothers wanted to capitalize on the movie's massive box office success, so they sold the tape to anybody with cash. I think it was the first movie to ever really do that. The first VHS tape to have a movie on it with the cover, the artwork to go along with it. I mean, everyone used to tape shows and stuff off their TVs, but when you would do that, you'd get commercials or strange network cuts in the movie. Oh, and that horrid censoring. Back then, you couldn't say anything remotely suggestive on TV, so they would come up with the worst and most hilarious dubbing over the swear words. You'd have to do some real mental gymnastics to figure out what Bruce Willis was really saying when he would say, "Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon," in Die Hard. I wanted to know who Mr. Falcon was. I never knew. That gets much harder if you haven't seen the movie before. You would just think that John McClane was a raving lunatic or something. So I started my movie collection. I didn't go down the usual route of buying all the movies in a series. I wouldn't do that for many, many years. It wasn't until the DVD collection of the Godfather movies were released. The funny thing is, after I bought it, I really only remember watching the box set once. I would buy the latest movies and try to skew my purchases to movies that looked interesting and hadn't really been advertised that much. That's where She's the One came from. It wasn't really a heavily advertised film. You may be able to spot the yellow poster on the wall at a rental place, usually half covered up by movies of Independence Day or Mark Wahlberg's Fear. Fear is another hidden gem of a movie that ended up in my collection. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's great. The movie was kind of a down-to-earth romantic comedy. What drew me in was the natural way the characters talked. I'm not really a rom-com kind of guy, and being single at the time when I first watched this, I didn't have anyone to lovingly laugh with while watching this movie. It wasn't filled with stupid Julia Roberts antics. That kind of stuff turned me away from most of her films. It was just real people doing real things, and in moronic ways that I could relate to. It had a few famous people in it as well. Cameron Diaz and Jennifer Aniston were probably the biggest draws. They were good, but seriously, there are only a few actors that really draw me into the movie just by being in it. Cameron and Jennifer were not on that list. Sean Connery was one of them. Medicine Man was really good, and The Rock will always be a Sean Connery film more than a Nicolas Cage one to me. But Mr. Connery's James Bond will always be near the top of the Bond actors, right after Pierce Brosnan. James Spader is another one, from Boston Legal to Blacklist. To me, he simply tears up the television screen. He's so fun to watch. And I know he's done so much more in his career. But I recently rewatched Boston Legal, so it kind of sticks in my mind right now. It also felt that I was the only one of my group friends who had ever heard of this movie. It felt pretty good. I knew something they didn't. After forcing several friends to watch it, including my loving wife, the common reaction was, No one seemed to have the reverence for it that I did. I mean, that was okay. I mean, my wife likes some horror movies and makes me watch them all the time. My reaction is always, so I guess that makes us even. This song still makes me remember the days of hunting through DVDs for that hidden gem that would surprise my friends. Kind of like this song. When I mention Tom Petty songs, no one ever mentions this amazing tune. They usually stick to Free Fallin' or Don't Come Around Here No More. Never a mention of Walls. And that's a shame, because in life, it's usually the stuff that no one really notices that is really, truly special. Thanks for listening to another story that fell out of my head. What are some movies that you think are amazing, but your friends just don't get? Please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear how others hunted for hidden treasures. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.